Today we shall discuss the beta decay. Now the analysis of the beta spectrum shows that the energy distribution curve starts from a very low energy, passes through a broad maximum and then cuts the energy axis at a certain point. This point is called the endpoint energy, and this endpoint energy can be available by taking the mass difference of the parent and the daughter nucleus. Now, the similar effect also observed in case of photoelectric effect. That is well known to you that the photoelectrons when ejected, it has a continuous energy distribution curve. But according to Einstein's equation, the photoelectrons should be monoenergetic, but it is not the case. So here also the similarly, in photoelectric effect also the electrons are emitted, but they are all atomic electrons. But here the electrons which are emitted from the nucleus, okay, although the dimension of the electron is much larger compared to the nucleus, then the question may naturally arise that how does the electron exist within the nucleus? Actually, electrons does not exist within the nucleus, but when the electrons and the positrons form at the surface of the nucleus and then ejected. So this is the energy distribution curve of the beta spectrum, where the electron and positrons are emitted from the nucleus in beta decay. Now, in the case when we have discussed the semi-empirical binding energy formula regarding the stability of different kinds of atoms or nuclei, then in that case we have observed that if the mass of the parent nucleus is greater than the mass of the daughter nucleus, if the analysis of beta spectrum shows that the energy distribution curve starts from a low energy then passes through a broad maximum and cuts the energy axis at a certain point called the endpoint energy. Similar to the photoelectric effect, but the basic difference is that the atomic electrons are ejected in photoelectric effect, and here the electrons are ejected from the nucleus. Now, if the mass of the parent nucleus is suppose say M1, say ZA, it goes to M2. When the beta electron is ejected, then the mass number remains unchanged, and as the electron is ejected from the nucleus, so the atomic number will be increased by 1 unit, because the neutron will be converted into proton, so atomic number will be increasing. So this is the case of the negative electron when ejected, and positron is emitted, then the mass of the daughter nuclei, mass number will remain unchanged, but here it will, when the positron is emitted, then the mass number of the parent nuclei remain unchanged, but the atomic number will decrease by 1 unit, because the proton here is converted into neutron. So the positron electron is emitted plus twice m. This is the positron emission, and if just like greater than the mass of the greater, only it is greater than m2, not by more than twice m, then in that case the electron capture the nucleus will capture an electron. So these are the conditions. Now the energy of the emitted beta particles, that can be calculated by taking the mass difference of the parent and the daughter nuclei. If we take the mass difference of this and this multiplied by c square, then gives you the energy of this emitted beta particles, and these energies are equal to the end point energy. Okay. Now therefore, according to the theory, if we consider the mass difference, then we get the energy of the beta spectrum, beta particles, then that beta particles should be monoenergetic. But it is observed that their energy varies continuously from a low energy to the end point energy. Now it reveals that the only single beta particle is not emitted in this process. In this process, more than 2 particles are involved. Here this parent, daughter, and not the beta particle, another particle will be there. Okay, so that the energy is distributed among the different particles. So it is understood that the continuous distribution of the beta particles. Otherwise, the beta particles should be monoenergetic, because it is calculated by the mass difference of these two, daughter and the parent nuclei. Now the energy available for beta nuclei can be computed or calculated from the mass difference of the parent and daughter nuclei. And this energy, which is calculated theoretically by the mass difference, that is equal to the end point energy. But besides but we have seen that the energy distribution curve has a continuous distribution. So that means the more than one particles will be involved in the process. Not only the electron, another particles are also involved in the process. But except the end point, observed that the energy of the beta particle is less than this. So if the energy of the beta particle is less than this, that means some other particle is also involved, or more than some other particles may be involved in this process, so they may carry out the rest of the energy. So we get a continuous distribution of energy curve. Now, so for this unaccountable loss of energy, the concept of neutrino or antineutrino is introduced. Now for this unaccountable loss of energy, and angular momentum, the neutrino and antineutrino hypothesis is introduced. Now within the nucleus there is continuous conversion of the neutrons and protons into one another. Now if a neutron is converted, the decay of free neutron and proton neutron is converting into proton plus an electron plus say antineutrino, and when the proton is converted, it is neutron plus positron plus neutrino. Now as there are three particles are involved, neutron is converted, you get proton, electron and antineutrino. The proton will remain within the nucleus, the electron will be ejected, and as there are three particles are involved, so continuous distribution of the energy curve is understood. Because the total energy is distributed among the three particles, so we get the continuous distribution of energy curve when the beta particle is emitted. Along with the beta particle, this particle will also emitted. So the total energy is distributed among these two. So continuous distribution of energy curve of the beta particle is understood. Now at the end point, when you calculate the energy of this beta particle by taking the mass difference of these two, now from this it reveals that either this particle, antineutrino or neutrino, whatever may be the case, it must have a very small energy, or its mass must be very small, because at the end point the whole energy is carried out by this electron, negative electron or positive electron. Therefore this particle will also be emitted, so it must carry a very less amount of energy. That means its mass must be very small compared to the electron. Now therefore, as the three particles are involved, so continuous distribution of energy curve is understood. Now from this expression also, the charge is conserved. Neutron is an uncharged particle, neutral particle. It is a positively charged particle, negatively charged particle, and this is therefore must be uncharged, neutral. So neutrino and antineutrino, from the conservation of charge principle, it shows that the neutrino or antineutrino must be neutral, uncharged particle. So here charged particle, positive, neutral, positive charge, neutral. So charge is balanced. Here also neutral, positive charge, negative charge, neutral. So charge is balanced. So from this equation, according to charge balance principle, according to conservation of charge, the neutrino or antineutrino must be neutral. So the continuous distribution of energy curve is understood, but it must have very small mass, and from the charge balance it is also clear that it is neutral. Now come to the angular momentum. It is a spin half particle, it is a spin half particle, it is a spin half particle. So if these two are spin half particle, then this must be an integer spin, but the left hand side is a spin half. So this antineutrino or neutrino must have a spin which is half what? Integral. Okay. Now therefore, from the as the neutron and protons are and electrons all are fermions, spin half particles. The neutron, proton and electrons are fermions. So to conserve the angular momentum, neutrino or antineutrino must have a spin which is half odd integer. Now the experiment tells that the neutrino or antineutrino is a spin half particle. Is a spin half particle. So that neutrino and antineutrino also have this spin half. So you get the neutron is converted into proton plus electron plus antineutrino. So spin half, half, and this is half. So the balanced side. Maybe one is spin up, spin down. So one will cancel. So you get the angular momentum will also be conserved. Now in the beta decay, what we get that the mass of the parent nucleus, which is ZA, and it is converted, beta minus antineutrino is emitted. Then we get a dotted nucleus M2, which is Z plus 1A. Now the electron is emitted from here. Mass of the dotted nuclei, the charge is increased by 1 unit because the negatively charged particle is going out, but the atomic number of atomic electrons remain unchanged. So here mass is increased by 1 unit. So here the number of electrons remains same. The proton number is increased, but the electron is less than this. So it becomes a positively charged ion because the number of proton is increased. Z number of electron was there. Now here the Z number of electron, but the proton is Z plus 1. Plus the, here you get the m0 c squared, the energy of the beta particle. If you calculate the energy, plus the ionization energy of the last electron, because the electron deficiency here is here. Okay, so ionization energy of one electron should be added here, so you get the total balance. So now, if we calculate the energy of this emitted beta electron from the mass difference of these two, so that is called the Q beta. The energy is the beta process. So in that case you get the Q beta that will be equal to the difference of these M1 Z A C square minus this M2 Z plus 1 So in this case, in this way, in the case of positron emission, you get here twice m0 c square because the mass of this parent nuclei must be 2 times the mass of the electron greater than the mass of the dotted nuclei. Then only positron emission will take place. So the Q beta of the beta process is given by this, because here you see here it will be plus, one deficiency of electron is here. So in the beta process, when dotted nucleus is in the unstable position, now in that case, if there is a small perturbation is applied to that, then the beta electrons will be emitted. Now after emission, it goes to this parent nucleus and the electron and the antineutrino will be emitted. Okay. So here you get say large number of neutron is converted into say proton plus electron plus antineutrino. So here you get a parent nuclei, then it goes to a daughter nuclei, plus electron, plus antineutrino. So after transition, in which state they will go? They may go to any available accessible energies, final accessible energy state. So here we have to calculate the transition rate by applying the time dependent perturbation theory, because here the three systems are involved. One is this one, psi 1, psi 2, psi 3. So the final state, the final wave function, total wave function of this system, this must be expressed in terms of the sum of these two, and psi 1 into psi 2 into psi 3, sum over all final accessible states. The available, they may go to any available energy state after transition. So in which state they will go, we don't know. But we have to calculate the transition rate from the initial state to any final accessible energy state. And for that, here the perturbation which is applied for a very small time. So we have to apply here the time dependent perturbation theory, which is called the Fermi's golden rule, to calculate the transition rate, probability of transition. Now, the time dependent perturbation theory, it is well known to all of you, I think. Two kinds of perturbation theory, one is time dependent, another is time independent. Here we consider the time dependent perturbation theory to calculate the transition rate. Now, in various quantum mechanical systems, we calculate the transition rate. In various quantum mechanical systems, the total wave function is written as a sum of two or more terms. Now, in beta decay, one part of the wave function describes a beta unstable nucleus. It is the parent. One part is beta unstable nucleus, the parent nucleus, and the other part, the final part, represents a daughter nuclei, daughter nucleus, beta particle or electron, the beta particle and neutrino or antineutrino. Because this much number of particles are involved, the parent nucleus, the daughter nucleus, beta particle and the neutrino and antineutrino. So the total wave function can be written in terms of the wave function of these particles. And there is a coupling between these wave functions through the interaction, which is called the very weak, called the weak interaction. And these wave functions and there is a coupling between these parts of the system which is weak interaction. Interaction involved here is weak in this case. Now, let H0 be the unparted Hamiltonian. Let H0 and psi m, the eigenstate of this unparted Hamiltonian H0 and psi m be the Hamiltonian and eigenfunctions of the unperturbed states. It is assumed that the interaction is turned on at a time t equal to 0. The perturbation, the interaction is turned on at time say t equal to 0, and therefore at a later time the total wave function can be expressed as so the total wave function at a later time when the perturbation is turned on, so it will go to some final accessible states, then that way total wave function of the system can be written in terms of this unperturbed eigenfunction psi n, as it is done in case of perturbation theory. So the final wave function at a later time psi, that can be written as sum over n, a n is the probability, mod square of this gives you the probability of finding the particle at the inner state, psi n, and as it is if it is a time independent perturbation theory, then only the psi n, but as it is a time dependent perturbation theory, so time dependence is here, e to the power minus I E n t by h cross. Suppose this is question number 1. Now here psi n is the eigenfunction of H0, so psi n, here psi n satisfies the equation that H0 psi n is equal to E n psi. This is the eigen energy of the unperturbed states. Now the total wave function this side satisfies the time dependent Schrodinger equation. The time dependent Schrodinger equation, because it is a time dependent perturbation is time dependent. So you get there is H psi that is equal to I H cross del psi del t. Where this H, it is not H0, H is equal to total Hamiltonian, that is H0 plus H prime, where H prime is the perturbation. This H prime, this is the perturbation, depends on time, switched on for a small time and then switched off. So now we substitute equation 4 and 1 in equation say 3. Here H, we write H0 plus H prime and psi will be replaced by this. Then we get now if we substitute this equation number 4 and 1 into equation number 3, substituting 1 and 4 in 3, then what we get? We get H0 plus H prime psi is your this one n t psi n e to the power minus I E n t by h cross del psi del t, we get del t of sum over n a n t psi n e to the power minus I e n t by h cross. Now on the left hand side we get two terms, one is h0 and another is h prime. When h0 will operate on this one, you get en psi n. Now therefore the first term we get sum over n, say en n t psi n e to the power minus I e n t by h cross plus sum over n h prime a n t psi n e to the power minus I e n t by h cross, the first two terms left hand side, and that is equal to, we get I h cross sum over n dot, that is del t of n dot represents the time derivative psi n e to the power minus I e n t by h cross plus sum over n e n a n t psi n e to the power minus I e n t by h cross. Because it will operate on this time factor, not on this one, and again on this. So you get two terms. So we get finally that I h cross sum over n dot t psi n e to the power minus I e n t by h cross, that is equal to sum over n h prime a n psi n to the power minus I e n t by h cross. So equation number 5, this one. Because this term and this term are same, so we get only this is equal to this one. Now we multiply equation 5 by psi n k from the left hand side, psi n k star from the left hand side. Psi n k is another eigenfunction of h0. Now if we multiply the equation 5 from the left hand side by psi k star, psi n is the eigenfunction of the nth state. So similarly, psi k for the k state, the eigenfunction is psi k. So if we multiply 5 by psi k star from the left hand side of the equation, from the left hand side. Now therefore we get and integrating over the whole space, then what we get, this is our equation number 5. We multiply it, therefore we get IH cross sum over n dot t psi k star psi n. From left hand side we are multiplying e to the power minus I e n t by h cross d tau volume element, that is equal to integration sum over n psi k star is h prime a n t psi n, and this e to the power minus I e n t by h cross d tau. Now psi n and psi k are the eigenfunctions of H0 of two different states, and H0 is Hermitian, so its eigenfunctions are orthogonal to each other. So when only, and this is the integration over the space, so this is integration over, this is a time function, this is a time function, so we get the integration psi k star psi n d tau. So this value of this integration is delta kn, so Kronecker delta. So when k is equal to n, only they get the value, otherwise 0. They are orthogonal to each other. So as the psi-n's are orthogonal because they are the eigenfunction of the H0, so what we get, that this integration psi k star psi n d tau, which will be equal to delta k n. When k equal to n is equal to unity, otherwise 0. Therefore, in view of this, this equation, suppose equation number 6, therefore the equation 6 becomes only here we get a n t n dot t only when k is equal to n, so there will be only one term, the sum will not be there, that will be equal to 1 by IH cross. This IH cross will come in this side, sum over n a n t e to the power minus I e n minus e k t by h cross integration psi k star h prime sin d tau. So this n t is equal to 1 by I h cross sum over n a n t, this is h prime k n, the value of this is h prime k n, and e n minus e k by h cross, the omega n k, so it will be written as e to the power I omega where there is h prime kn is equal to this integration psi k star h prime psi n beta and omega kn that is ek minus en by h cross. Now, if we consider that here the interaction is very weak, the perturbation is very weak, it is a weak interaction. So, if h prime is weak, then build up of probability in going from say initial state to some other final state is very small, because the interaction involved in this case is very weak. So, in that case, under this assumption that is the interaction is very weak, so the perturbation is very weak. The build up therefore the build up of probability in other than the initial state psi m, that psi m is the initial state, is very small. Over the time interval. Now, in first order perturbation theory, suppose say am is equal to 1, the probability of finding particle in the initial state, and other ams are 0. Therefore, the equation 7 becomes is ak equal to 1 by I h cross h prime k m. M suppose initial state, instead of n I am writing here say m e to the power I omega k m t dt, because here you get say a n dot t, so integrating over this time we get ak or a n, whatever it is, the final state, and m is the initial state. So we have to integrate this one to find the probability of the final state is the kth state. Now let the perturbation the H prime is turned on at time t equal to 0, at t equal to 0, and turned off at suppose say t is equal to t1. A small time interval 0 to t1, the perturbation is switched on and then switched off. Then to which state the unstable beta nuclei will go? In a given small energy interval, about say EM, initial energy state, the matrix element which is involved in the equation, that is H prime Km, the matrix element H prime Km is constant, is considered to be a constant for all the states. It is a crude assumption that the interaction is very weak interaction, so this is considered to be a constant quantity. So if it is a constant, then equation then if we integrate that, say, earlier equation, which is represented in equation 8, then in that case we get AK. It has an integration over it. We get taken this H prime Km is a constant quantity. It can be taken out of the integration H prime Km by I H cross, and integration over the exponential e to the power I omega kmt. So we get e to the power I omega km t1 minus 1, because integration is from 0 to t1. You get I omega km. So you can write it in this way. It is H prime Km by I H cross omega Km e to the power I omega Km T1 by 2. It is taken common by 2. So you get e to the power I H cross I omega Km T1 by 2 minus e to the power minus this. So we get the sine function. So you get twice sine omega km t1 by 2. So this is the probability of the final finding the system in the kth state after applying the perturbation H prime, which is considered to be very, very small. So the transition rate from the initial state psi m to all other states that is given by, suppose lambda is the transition rate, that is 1 by t1, total time is t1, so sum over k, you get a k mod square. If you take the mod square of this, you get the probability. So this is 1 by t1 mod square of this, here you get minus infinity to plus infinity a k mod square dn d k, because here the final state, to which final state is going, because there are large number of accessible energy states per unit energy interval. This gives you the number density of the energy level. Okay, allowed energy level. This is the number density of energy level. That means how many allowed energy levels are there in per unit energy interval. So you have to integrate over this, and dnd is the number of accessible final state per unit energy, or energy density of states. Now omega kn, we know that Ek minus Em by H cross. So H cross omega, H cross d omega km is equal to your d Ek now therefore your lambda will be equal to, it is 4 H cross, if you substitute in the earlier equation, by T1 H cross square H prime Km mod square, then minus infinity to plus infinity sin square omega Km T1 by 2 by omega Km square dn d omega Km. Now dnd is a constant quantity, number of energy density of states, it can be taken out. Now if we substitute that, if we put, if say x is equal to, we put omega km t1 by 2, omega km t1 by 2 is equal to x, then what we get? We get the transition probability or transition rate that is lambda, that is equal to twice h prime km mod square by h cross dn dv. It is taken out of the integration, constant quantity, minus infinity to plus infinity sin square x by x dx. Now, therefore, the value of this integration is square sin x by x is equal to pi by 2. So you get here the integration twice pi by h cross h prime km mod square dn dv. This is the total transition probability 2 pi by h cross. You have to calculate this matrix element, initial state, between the initial and the final state, what the perturbing potential, and this is the accessible number density of the final states. It is called the Fermi-Golden limit. So this gives you the transition probability, a rate of transition from an initial unperturbed nuclei to final state.